release the dream again. The city of stone.
For however talked about of a topic they may be, co-ed groups tend to be a bit of a rarity in the K-pop scene. Most of the time, when a new group appears, it's some sort of project group or duo, and even if they do manage to garner some attention, they're almost always cut short for some reason or another. It's a vicious cycle, and one that a lot of companies choose to stay away from. However, I do believe that there is some untapped potential here that has yet to be marketed upon. Something companies seem to be glancing over when it comes to contemplating these groups. But to get there, we need to look at the pros and cons of these types of groups first, and try to figure out why they have become such an obscenity in some of these companies' eyes. Buckle your seatbelts, travelers, and get ready for the ride.
Run, baby, run.
When it comes to why co-ed groups aren't as common as a thing as others, most people would probably chalk it up to, well, scandals. Troublemaker, Triple H, even more recently with Checkmate. Whether or not these issues were truly the members' fault or not, it does bring negative attention to the band, and these instances do seem to fester around these sort of groups. Unfortunately, this is the only con that there just isn't much wiggle room for. It does take a lot of time and effort to prove yourself worthy enough to the public to be able to dodge these allegations, or at least take them with a bit of grace. However, it is not impossible. KARD has managed to remain relatively successful within the music scene for years now, and it was also announced recently that on top of everything else, they've decided to resign with their company, which means they haven't been affected too badly by any scandals or rumors of the sorts. It may be a difficult step, but it's absolutely attainable, and KARD is only proof of that amongst many other things. Another con is of course going to be the cost. Separate living spaces, dressing rooms, even music can be a struggle to get a hold on for cheap. And while this may not be too big of a downer for a bigger company, it can definitely leave a pretty big hole in the pockets of a smaller one. But there is a silver lining in all this, which is also tied into our first pro. No matter where you're coming from, the group is bound to garner at least a little bit of traction at debut.
Run, baby, run. Run, baby, run.
I think that this is best proven with Checkmate's debut back in 2020. While they obviously weren't getting looks like other huge groups debuting around them, people were certainly looking forward to them. Even though they came from an unknown company and had little to no promotions leading up to their debut. I'm even inclined to believe that if it wasn't for everything the company did to their artists, that the attention would have continued to accumulate. However, with the constant adding and subtracting of different members, staff that clearly shouldn't be working in this industry, or around people for that matter, as well as it just being very clear that the company had no idea how to promote a K-pop group, let alone one as interesting as Checkmate, all the hype they had around their debut quickly faded away. If someone was able to capitalize on this attention early on though, I do think this could be a game changer for some groups. I mentioned music earlier on in the cost section, however, I do think that this is one of those iffy ones. I decided to bring it up specifically because it was actually BM of KARD that talks very prominently about how difficult it is to find music that fits a co-ed group, this being one of the main factors as to why he decided to pick up producing in the first place. However, much with like how every boy group and girl group don't function the same way, neither will every co-ed group. A group like Co-ed School, for example, almost solely featured their female singers in the songs, their male members ending up acting more as featured guests rather than actual members in the same group, despite following basically the same formula as KARD does. However, later with Checkmate's debut, they've switched it up a bit. Their songs were far less rap-based than the other two groups, and even when there was a section here or there, it was usually given to one of the girls rather than the guys. On top of everything else, none of their voices were so far apart in pitch that it was impossible to find a song that fit them. So I definitely think this point will be more or less dependent on each individual group. KARD's music definitely sounds like something only a co-ed group would release, whereas Checkmate's music could have been given to just about any other group and still sound about the same.
Run, baby, run. Run, baby, run.
This is another one that I think could possibly be both. However, I'm counting it as a pro as it will tie in more with my next points. While there are obviously going to be some certain concepts that are unattainable by co-ed groups that are more popular among other groups, I do think that there are concepts that only these groups can pull off. Obviously, it wouldn't be that hard to bring in a male or female dancer in the opposite group to get the same effect, but the part I'm more interested in is the visuals, the aesthetics, if you will. There's nothing more powerful than seeing the members of KARD lined up in their formation. Their stylists do an amazing job of making them all stand out, and music videos like Gunshot and You and Me play on some already great ideas in amazing ways. With just a slight added touch of creativity, I think there could be some really interesting ideas laid out in these groups that only they could pull off as elegantly as they do. And this brings me to my final and most important point. There's basically no expectations when it comes to co-ed groups. Let me explain. Even before K-pop, there were other popular boy and girl groups out there, whether it be J-pop that was founded way before K-pop was, or Western artists like Pussycat Dolls or the NSYNC. There's always been a blueprint for these kinds of things, but for co-ed groups, even outside of K-pop, there's just simply not. Most co-ed groups are reserved for bands or duos, maybe even a collaboration here and there. But there are hardly any actual co-ed groups that have gotten much recognition, which is both scary and exciting, because it means you have no map to follow. You have to create your own way, and that is what I think these companies are missing out on. No one's willing to take the risk, the jump into the unknown to see what comes of it. The reason why so many of these groups fail is because the only people willing to fund them are the ones that already have nothing to lose. But this also keeps them from fully going off the deep end, wanting to play it as safe as they can and refusing to have fun with the marketing that goes into these groups. The bigger some of these companies get, the more and more I want them to try something like this. A company like JYP or SM wouldn't take much of a loss from something like this if they were to go south. And on top of that, JYP and SM have been known to play with unique concepts and ideas when it comes to their groups. Acts like NCT, aespa, even Day6 and Extraordinary Heroes aren't exactly your average idol groups. You take just a tad bit of that creativity and spunk as well as the added bonus of just simply being a co-ed group and you practically have a new monster on your hands in the making. While I do understand that the cons can way outweigh the pros, I definitely don't think it's a huge leap to make, and would love to see a company that has the ability to truly play with a group like this try it out. My bets are on JYP though. Their group ideas just keep on getting weirder and weirder. You can't tell me they went straight from K-band to whatever the hell Inmix is supposed to be and just skipped right over co-ed group. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed, and as always, I will see you next time, travelers.